People always say that everything changes when you become a mother. And for me, it did, just not in the way I expected. I thought I would feel full of love, excitement, and maybe a little fear. I thought my husband, Larry, would be emotional when he saw our baby boy for the first time. But that's not what happened. Right after our son, Kevin, was born, Larry looked at him. Really looked at him. But he didn't smile. He didn't cry. He didn't even try to hold him. Instead, he just stared for a few seconds and then said, "We need a DNA test." At first, I thought he was joking. Surely, no one would say something like that in a hospital room just after their child is born, right? But then, he added with a smirk on his face, "He's too good-looking to be mine." The room went completely quiet. It felt like all the air had been sucked out. I was still sitting in my hospital bed, holding Kevin, only a few hours after giving birth. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. My arms tightened around Kevin without me even thinking. He was so small, his skin soft and pink. He made a little sound like a coo, completely unaware of what had just happened. I laughed, kind of nervously, because I didn't know what else to do. I hoped he was joking, even if it was a bad joke. But no one else laughed with me. One of the nurses gave a small, uncomfortable chuckle, but it didn't sound like she found it funny. My mom, who had been looking at her phone by the window, suddenly froze. "Larry," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "what are you talking about?" He didn't smile or laugh. He just stood there, arms crossed, still looking at our baby like he was trying to solve a mystery. His eyes were focused, and that smirk never left his face. "I'm just saying," he said with a shrug. "Look at those eyes, that hair, that little dimple on his chin. He's way too perfect. There's no way he got all that from me." My face turned red, not from feeling proud, but from feeling hurt. I couldn't believe he was seriously saying this. My chest felt tight, like it was hard to breathe. I tried to laugh again, but it didn't come out right. "You're serious?" I asked. "You really want to test?" He walked closer to the bed and leaned down to get a better look at Kevin. "Just to be sure," he said, like he was talking about checking the tires on a car, not about whether or not this baby was his. I felt heat rise up my neck. My hands began to shake. I couldn't believe the man I had been married to for 5 years could say something so cold, especially in that moment. And just like that, everything had changed. I held Kevin closer in my arms, pressing him gently against my chest. His little body was warm, and that warmth was the only thing keeping me calm in that moment. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mom stand up from her chair. She crossed her arms tightly, and her lips were pressed together in a straight line. She didn't say anything, but I could tell exactly what she was thinking. She had never fully trusted Larry. And maybe, deep down, I was starting to feel the same. I looked over at Larry, my husband, the man who had come to every doctor's appointment with me, who painted Kevin's room a soft green, and who said we should name our baby after his grandfather. But in that moment, he didn't seem like the man I knew. He looked different. Cold. Distant. Like he didn't believe this baby was his. He said again, like it meant nothing, just covering all the bases, and shrugged. Like this wasn't a huge deal. But it was. Everything felt different now. The room, the happiness, even the sound of Kevin's gentle breathing, it all felt changed. It was like a shadow had come into the room with Larry's words. Why did it hurt so much? Why didn't he trust me? Was I not enough? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This moment was supposed to be beautiful. Instead, it felt like the start of something I never saw coming. After Larry said what he said, everything changed, not just in the hospital room, but inside me too. You'd think that after giving birth, all your thoughts would be about your baby, counting fingers and toes, watching every tiny movement, falling in love over and over every time they blink. But that wasn't how it went for me. I couldn't stop thinking about Larry and what he had said. His words kept replaying in my mind. 3 days later, we were sent home from the hospital. My mom said she wanted to stay with us for a while to help out. But I knew the truth. She didn't want to leave me alone with Larry. I told her she was being too dramatic. She didn't argue. She just gave me that look, her lips tight, her eyes full of quiet worry. Larry acted like everything was fine. He didn't bring up the DNA test again. He changed diapers, made silly jokes, and even took selfies with Kevin. He posted pictures online with captions like, "Already got my mini-me." But behind all of it, I still felt that something was wrong. I tried to move on. I told myself it was just a bad joke that Larry said at the wrong time. But something inside me started to feel off, like a slow, quiet ache I couldn't explain. It wasn't just the comment he made. It was the way he looked at Kevin sometimes, like he was trying to figure something out. One night, I saw him standing over Kevin's crib, just staring at him. He didn't know I was watching. His eyebrows were pulled together, and his eyes were squinting, like he was searching for something he couldn't quite see. When I walked into the room, he jumped a little, then laughed it off. "Just wondering when he's going to start looking like me," he said. I smiled, but something about the way he said it made me feel uncomfortable. It gave me chills. Then little things started to happen. Things I might have ignored before, but now I noticed everything. One afternoon, a nurse from the hospital called. I think her name was Christine. She said it was just a routine check-in. Her voice was polite, but when she asked for Kevin's hospital ID number, I heard something strange in her tone, like a pause that didn't feel right. I gave her the number, and after a moment of silence, she said everything was okay. I asked if something was wrong, and she said no, but the way she said it made my stomach twist. Later that night, I pulled out all of Kevin's hospital papers. That's when I noticed something odd. The wristband they gave him at birth, the one with his ID, had a number that didn't match mine. It was off by just one digit. Maybe it was a mistake, a simple typo. But once you start to question things, it's hard to stop. I stayed up late searching online about hospital mix-ups with newborns. I read story after story. I didn't plan to go down that road, but I couldn't help it. Finally, I showed Larry everything. "Are you serious right now?" he said, laughing. "You were mad at me for saying something was wrong, and now you're the one acting like this baby isn't ours?" I tried to respond, but he kept talking. "Julie, you're tired. You just had a baby. Your hormones are everywhere. Don't let your mind play tricks on you." He kissed my forehead and walked away, leaving me standing there, holding medical papers and full of questions. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just exhausted. But if everything really was okay, why couldn't I stop feeling like something was wrong? That night, I started checking everything: his birth certificate, the hospital bracelet, old ultrasound pictures, even photos from before he was born. I became someone I didn't recognize. I was searching for answers I wasn't even sure I wanted to find. I didn't feel like myself anymore. I was a new mom, holding my baby in one arm and reading scary stories online with the other. I didn't want to believe Larry was serious about getting a DNA test, but deep down, I started to wonder if maybe he wasn't completely wrong, and that thought scared me. A few days later, Larry brought it up again. He didn't sound angry. We weren't fighting. He just said it while drinking coffee, as calmly as if he were talking about going to the dentist. "I found a private clinic that does same-day DNA testing," he said, taking a sip from his mug. "They're discreet and reliable." I looked at him, confused. "You're still thinking about that?" He looked up at me. His face was calm, too calm. Almost like he had planned every word. "I think it'll give us both peace of mind," he said. "Both of us?" I didn't respond right away. I looked down at Kevin, sleeping on my chest. His tiny mouth moved slightly, like he was dreaming. He looked so peaceful, so perfect. The fact that someone, especially his own father, could question him felt like a slap in the face. But at the same time, I had been having doubts too. The ID number that was off, the nurse who acted strange, the way Larry sometimes looked at Kevin like he was trying to solve a mystery. "I thought you were joking," I whispered, still staring at our son. Larry shrugged. "Half joking. But seriously, Julie, wouldn't it help you too? You've been acting different. Anxious." He wasn't wrong. I had been on edge. But the way he said it didn't sound like he was worried about me. It sounded like he had already made up his mind and was trying to lead me there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept glancing at Larry, not because I was afraid he'd hurt Kevin, but because I realized something painful. I didn't really know him anymore. Or maybe I never did. The next morning, I called the hospital. I said I had a few questions about Kevin's birth records. They transferred me to one person, then another, and finally to someone named Laura, who worked as a hospital administrator. She sounded careful, like she was choosing her words. "Everything looks fine on our end," she said after a short pause. "Healthy baby boy born at 2:30 a.m., no problems." "But his bracelet didn't match mine," I said. "One number was off." "That can happen," she answered quickly, too quickly. "We've updated our labeling systems since then." Before she could finish, I already felt the worry growing again. I wanted to ask more questions, but she cut me off. "If you want printed records, you'll need to speak to patient records," she said. Then the line went dead. I sat there for a while, still holding the phone. It felt like everyone wanted this to just go away, like if they ignored it long enough, it would disappear on its own. That same day, I started going through Larry's old things. I looked through his documents, yearbooks, anything I could find. I told myself I was just curious. But really, I was looking for something, anything that would either prove my fears were true or calm them down. But I found strange things. Or maybe I didn't find enough. There were no baby pictures, no childhood keepsakes. Just a few IDs from his adult life and a college diploma. I noticed something odd. The diploma didn't list a middle name. I had never seen that before. Or maybe I had and just didn't think about it. Later, I asked him about it. He laughed and said, "I told you I lost all that stuff in a fire when I was a kid. Remember?" Did he? I couldn't remember him ever saying that. But now, every small detail started to feel like part of a bigger puzzle. Once you start pulling on one thread, it's hard to stop. Even so, I agreed to the DNA test. Not because I thought Kevin wasn't our baby, but because I needed answers. Not about Kevin, about Larry. Of course, I didn't say that out loud. I just nodded and said, "Okay." As soon as I agreed, Larry let out a deep breath, like he was relieved. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't scared of what the test might show. He was scared I might stop asking questions. The test was set for Saturday. Larry took care of everything. He called the clinic, filled out the forms, and even drove us there like it was just another normal chore. He was calm, too calm. Meanwhile, I felt like something was squeezing my chest tighter and tighter. Kevin sat in his car seat in the back, looking up at the roof and kicking off his socks again. He was the only one who looked calm. I wished I could feel that way too. At the clinic, we gave our samples, mine, Larry's, and Kevin's. The nurse said we'd get the results in 5 business days. On the way out, Larry joked, "Bet he's 90% angel, 10% trouble." But I barely heard him. My mind was already spinning. 6 days. 6 days to wait. 6 days stuck between doubt and fear. 6 days knowing Larry thought Kevin might not be his. And knowing I wasn't sure who Larry really was anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed pretending to scroll through my phone while Larry slept next to me. My mind kept going back to his story about the fire. It felt too perfect, too well-timed. Why couldn't I remember him ever telling me that before? The next morning, I still didn't have any answers, just more questions. I dropped Kevin off with my mom and went back to the hospital alone. I told the front desk I had forgotten a small blanket with Kevin's name stitched on it. That wasn't true, but it helped me get inside and back to the maternity ward. As soon as I saw Nurse Christine, the one who had looked nervous after Kevin was born, I felt a mix of hope and fear. She recognized me right away. "Julie, right?" she said with a gentle smile. "How's the little guy?" "He's good," I replied. "But I have a strange question." I told her about the hospital bracelet, how the number on Kevin's didn't match mine. I also mentioned the odd phone call I got from the hospital. I expected her to say it was nothing. But instead, her face went pale. I probably shouldn't say anything," she said, looking around. But the night Kevin was born, there was a quick issue with the system. For a moment, it showed 2 babies under your ID number. Just a glitch. It was cleared right away. Management said it was a system error and told us to move on. I felt cold all over. My heart started racing. Was Kevin ever taken out of my room without me? I asked. Christine hesitated. For a routine check, yes, but only for a short time. How long is short? I asked. She didn't answer. I thanked her, even though I felt frozen, and walked out of the hospital in a daze. My hands shook on the steering wheel.
My mouth was dry.
The words "two babies under your ID" kept ringing in my head. I couldn't tell Larry what I had just found out. Not yet. I needed to know more. So I started digging. I checked social media, online records, anything I could find about Larry's past. I even searched public databases, something I never thought I'd do. It felt like I had become a detective in my own life. But the more I searched, the stranger things seemed. I couldn't find any proof of Larry graduating high school. There were no photos of him from before 2014. No posts, no old friends tagging him. Not even a single person online talking about memories of him as a kid or teen. It was like Larry didn't exist before college. Like he had just appeared at age 20. I stared at a blank profile photo on an old alumni page from his college. My stomach twisted with unease. At first, I agreed to the DNA test to prove that Kevin was ours. But now, I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that Kevin might not be Larry's, or the growing fear that Larry wasn't who he said he was at all. Then, early on a Friday morning, the phone rang. I was in the kitchen, still in my pajamas, rocking Kevin in one arm when my phone rang. The screen said, "Unknown number." I almost didn't answer. Something inside me felt off. But I picked it up anyway. "Mrs. Fink," a calm, serious voice said. "This is Dr. Adam from Greenbrook Medical. We need you and your husband to come in today to talk about your paternity test results. In person." "In person?" I repeated, my throat suddenly dry.
"Yes."
"It's urgent." My stomach dropped. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. When I told Larry, he didn't ask questions. He just said, "Finally," and grabbed his keys. The car ride to the clinic was silent. Kevin slept peacefully in his car seat, completely unaware of the tension building around him. I stared out the window, trying to calm my racing heart. At the clinic, a nurse brought us into a small office. It was cold and plain, like they had taken all the warmth out of the room on purpose. A digital clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second adding to my nerves. Then Dr. Adam walked in. He looked serious, probably in his 50s, with gray hair at his temples. He sat across from us, opened a folder, and paused for a long time. My chest tightened. "I'm going to be honest," he said. "The results are very unusual." I held Kevin tighter, feeling the warmth of his little body in my arms. He was real. He was mine. Dr. Adam looked at me first. "Julie, biologically, this child is not related to Larry." I didn't move. Deep down, I think I already knew that. Then the doctor turned to Larry. He looked at him longer than expected. There was something in his eyes, maybe fear, maybe confusion. "And Larry," he said, his voice softer now, "not only are you not a biological match for this child, but your DNA doesn't match any records linked to the ID you gave us." Larry froze. I looked at him, waiting for him to look shocked, to deny it, to say something. But he didn't react at all. His face stayed perfectly still. Dr. Adam shut the folder. "We ran your name, date of birth, even your photo through our system," he said. Everything triggered a federal alert. I felt cold all over.
My voice barely came out.
"What are you saying?" Dr. Adam didn't answer me directly. He picked up the phone on his desk, pressed a button, and said a sentence I'll never forget. "Security, we need you in room 4 immediately." And just like that, time stood still. I turned slowly to look at Larry. For the first time since I had met him, I saw something in his eyes, a tiny flash of panic. It was there for just a second, and then it was gone. "What is going on?" I whispered. Larry stood up quickly. "This is crazy," he said sharply. "You think I'm some kind of what? A con artist?" Dr. Adam didn't even blink. "We don't think," he said. "We know. Your DNA matches a man named Frank Bagnale. He was arrested in 2016 and disappeared after making bail. The real Larry Fink died in a car crash the next year. We don't know how long you've been using his name." I couldn't breathe. The room started spinning. The man I had married, the man I thought was the father of my child, the man I loved, he wasn't real. 3 security guards walked into the room. The man I thought I knew, Larry or Frank or whoever he really was, looked at me. Not with guilt. Not with anger. Just sadness. Like maybe a small part of him had wanted to live a real life, just not his own. And just like that, they took him away. Out of my life. Out of Kevin's. Out of a lie we had been living. I didn't cry, not right then.
Not when they put handcuffs on him.
Not when the door closed behind him. Not even when Dr. Adam gave me the printed DNA results, the final proof that none of this was a dream. I just sat there, frozen, holding Kevin close to my chest. His tiny head rested under my chin. He was the only thing that felt real. The days after felt slow and heavy, like I was walking through deep water. Everything was hard. Everything hurt. When the story hit the news, reporters tried to talk to me. They called it a bizarre paternity case with a criminal twist. I hated that. This wasn't just a headline. This was my life. It turned out that Frank or Larry or whoever had been living under fake names for years. He was running from debt, from court cases, even from rumors of fraud in other states. He had never hurt me physically, but the truth cut deeper than any wound ever could. What kind of person lies about everything just to be with someone? And worse, what kind of person becomes a father in the middle of that lie? For a long time, I blamed myself. I went over every memory, every birthday, every laugh, every I love you. I looked for signs. Anything I had missed. But the truth is, people like him are good at pretending. They know how to be exactly who you want them to be. But the thing that shook me the most? Kevin was mine. I had feared the worst, that my baby had been switched, that I somehow went home with the wrong child. But after an investigation, the hospital confirmed what Nurse Christine had tried to explain. There had been a system glitch, a mix-up, but it was fixed before we were discharged. Kevin never left my side long enough for anything bad to happen. He was mine from the moment he was born. Still, in a strange and hurtful way, Frank used that glitch to his advantage. He played into my fear and confusion. He let me doubt everything, just so I wouldn't start doubting him. It was smart. It was mean. It was planned. It took me weeks before I could even say his real name. Even longer before I stopped thinking of him as Larry. Now, it's just me and Kevin. We moved in with my mom for a while. Her name is Olivia. She never said, "I told you so." She just hugged me when I finally let myself cry. And she holds Kevin like he's the most important thing in the world because to me, he is. I filed to end the marriage. There were no legal problems. After all, you can't be married to someone who never really existed. Sometimes, I still get mail with the name Larry on it. I throw it away without opening it. And some nights, when the house is quiet and Kevin is asleep, I think about the man I thought I loved, the man who stayed up for late-night feedings, who painted Kevin's nursery light green, who kissed my forehead before every doctor's visit. Was any of that real? Or was it all just part of his lie? I don't know. Maybe I never will. But here's what I do know. Sometimes the truth doesn't just hurt. It breaks your world apart. It makes you rebuild everything. It makes you figure out who you are without the person you thought would always be there. And in that rebuilding, in that pain, you find strength. You find yourself. And I found Kevin. That's more than enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever doubted everything, your relationships, your memories, even your own gut feeling, just know you're not alone. The hardest truths can lead to the strongest version of you. If this story touched you, reminded you to trust yourself, or made you feel seen, please like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more real and honest stories. Your support means so much. And maybe, just maybe, the next story you hear will be the one you needed most. Until then, take care of your heart, and trust it too.